I am an everyday athlete.
I am an everyday athlete.
I am an everyday athlete.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jared Basson with Mark McCain, and you are listening to Everyday Athlete, a podcast devoted to bringing you the amazing stories behind the lives of day-to-day CrossFit athletes like yourself. And we are currently in John Carrico's studio with the best lighting we've ever had.
Amazing lighting.
This is pretty, even makes me look good.
All the lights.
Yeah, makes me look good. Welcome, John.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us here. Both of us,
Oh, God.
almost a
Just
disaster.
want to get that closer.
Oh.
Yeah, we both Mark and I have been here more than once. I've probably been here the most out of any of us. John and I have gone out a couple nights together and had some fun, and this is a wonderful, wonderful studio. And again, thank you for having us here, because a lot of people haven't seen it. We tried to do something here once, right? We tried to do a poker night here.
Poker night.
Yeah, people were afraid. You know, it's downtown.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
across the river. It's like the ocean. It's like
it's
crossing
scary.
the Atlantic, right?
Do I need a passport to come across the river?
You need you want to fly in Kentucky next year, right?
What?
Is that true?
A passport to
Yeah.
fly in Kentucky?
Yeah, to fly from Kentucky, because I don't think the Kentucky IDs are up to par.
Oh, that's
wow.
right. That's right. They're
Kentucky
changing
is
all that.
behind the times? What? What's going on?
It's weird, right? So, John, how long have you been here in the studio?
This space, we've been in this studio for about 10 years now. Before that, I was on 4th Street for about 8 years. So,
That's cool. So, wow, almost 20 years in the business.
yep.
That's crazy. How'd you get started in I guess the world? Because you guys do, it's not just photography studio, it's everything.
We do a lot here now. I mean, with anything, you know, you have to change over time. So in the beginning, we started out doing only still photography. And as technology changes and things get, you know, you just have to evolve with the technology. So we start doing a lot of video production as well. We've gone to Africa and made a movie. So
Yeah.
it's
That was recent,
yeah.
relatively recently.
yeah,
right?
like 4 years ago.
Wow,
So
we've known
it
each other
just-
that long.
It just got released.
Yeah, you were gone for
know,
a while, right? I mean, that was
digitally.
months in
Uh,
Africa.
6 weeks.
6 weeks?
yeah.
Okay.
2 months,
So
roughly.
Months.
Well, months.
Literally days.
It's literally
When-
days in Africa.
it's a long time to be in the Congo, put it that way.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
man. How did you get started in? I mean, that's a whole story in itself, I'm sure. I mean, because
Okay, well,
a lot
that's-
of people
yeah.
getting into, everybody's a photographer now,
Yep.
right? We're currently filming this on a cell phone, you know, and it's going to be equally as high quality as something you can buy, you know, as far as by the numbers. But you know, obviously, there's way more to it than what meets the eye. So how did you get started in the business?
That's interesting. So I studied psychology in college, and I always had a love for photography. So as electives and stuff, you know, I was always exploring some photo classes, playing around in the dark room, really loved that aspect of it, and just really had a passion for it. I was planning on getting my master's degree in psychology, you know, after I graduated. I have some friends, like my friend's father owned a design studio in Cincinnati. He just happened to be downtown on an errand at the local photo store, and there was a guy complaining that he couldn't find any good help. And he said, "Hey, my friend John's like really into photography. He might be able to help you." And he said, "Give me my number." And next thing you know, like I ended up like going all over the country with this guy and assisting him at first, you know, as an apprentice. And that's when I kind of realized that I think I can do this.
Sure.
You know, I think I can do this. So from then on, I kept doing it.
Can you put a date on that, just out of curiosity?
That would be like 1998.
Whoa.
In the last millennia. Well, I ask because photography's always been a passion, but you know, more of just a hobby for me. But you know, even from when I started, the game has changed, and it
Yes.
changes almost every year. I feel like.
Oh, it's a huge change. Like at that time, it was only film. Like you were not shooting digital. professionally yet, just because the camera technology wasn't there. They were out, but they were $30,000 for something that could be, 1 inch by 2 inches big.
Oh man.
It was, experimental years for that. I embraced that very early on. So I worked about 3 or 4 years in the industry as an apprentice and second shooter and stuff like that. But the whole time I really embraced the digital. And when I started my company, Alias Imaging here, that was our biggest selling point going out, that like we were young, we know digital, and that's the way of the future. So that's how we kind of marketed ourselves.
It's very cool. And it's good to
Smart.
have that foresight too. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Everybody was afraid of it. I mean, everybody had a fear. Like all these guys that have been shooting for, 20 years or whatever, they only knew film. They didn't understand digital. They didn't trust it. And it was something we realized you just had to embrace if we were going to move forward.
I think you
And-
could see a crossover there with like CrossFit, right? So
Yeah.
it's people are generally scared of what they don't know, and if people don't know about CrossFit, they're generally
Oh.
scared of it. Like, oh, I can't tell you how many times whenever we ask someone like, hey, what do you think CrossFit is? It's like, oh, it's the tires and it's the ropes. And generally speaking, it's like, John, you've been doing CrossFit since, obviously we've met 4 or 5 years ago. And it's like, how many times do we actually flip tires or do ropes? it's so much more than that. So yeah, that's a really cool story.
And then just going off Mark's point, when I mean, we've met now, we're going to be in our 5th year. Actually, for those listening, our 4-year anniversary was 4 days ago.
Awesome.
Hey,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll probably do something next year.
I think I rang the PR bell.
Yeah. So yeah, we've been at Triumph for 4 years now. And you were there prior to us, right?
Yeah, I actually, when it was UMF,
Right.
I think I joined the second week they were open. So I've kind of been there since
Fantastic.
the beginning.
What drew you into the world of CrossFit and mixing things up a little bit? Because it's really, especially back then, for a lot of people, it was just like, I need something different.
Yeah, my journey is, I don't know if it's different than other people's or not, but I'd never worked out a day in my life. I was always into music. Maybe I did some endurance drumming, you could say, in my speed metal days, but that's about as athletic as I got. And I was 38 years old, and I was starting to think about, becoming 40 and stuff like that, and thinking, you know what, like, I've always been skinny, like not out of shape or anything, but I was like, I have a feeling that, I need to start doing something. So I thought, by the time I'm 40, I want to make sure I feel better about myself than I've ever felt in my entire life, because I know that's a pivotal year for a lot of people when they start evaluating themselves. They're like, look at me, like I'm overweight, or I'm stressed, or I got gray hair, or there's this or there's that. It's a benchmark age, and so it was a goal of mine to feel the best I could in the next 2 years. So I started running. I mean, I literally put on some shoes and I ran a mile down the street, and I was amazed. I was like, I just ran a mile.
Yeah.
And 1 mile became 2 miles became 3, and then I started thinking about stuff. I mean, I had no idea what a 5K was, a 10K was, or what that meant to do any of that stuff, but I just started doing it like almost obsessively every day.
Yeah.
And I got to a point where like my knees were bothering me a little bit, and so I started researching, got on WebMD, being my own doctor.
I either have
And-
tendonitis or I have cancer.
Yeah, who knows what it is or
I have a
why, but
splinter.
I know it's happening because I'm running, and maybe I'm running wrong. Maybe I'm running too much. I don't know what it is. But what it came down to, any of the research, it said you probably need some strength training in your legs to keep up with the amount of running that you were doing. Again, I got pretty obsessive about it. I was like, I'm going to run a half marathon. That was like the goal or something. And so I started doing strength training. I did P90X. I loved it. I mean, again, I got obsessive about that. Running became secondary once I got into it, and I completed the entire program. It transformed my body into ways I could have never believed that.
Did you dive into the nutrition and P90X too, or was it just the workouts?
Just the workout for the most part, because I would consider myself a healthy eater all of my
there you go.
life. I mean, I did have to obviously eat to keep up with some of the things that I was doing. Like if I'm going to run that much and do P90,
You improved.
I
you
needed
increased. Yeah.
more calories because I don't eat much. Let's face it, I just don't eat much.
I have the opposite issue.
So,
But right there, that's a huge thing to be able to understand, that you have to have this. There is a direct correlation. You know, for whatever reason, we struggle with that all the time. That, and most people end up getting it, but it takes some time for a lot of people to get it. That there's a correlation between what you're putting in your body and how you're feeling, or the fact that I'm doing more, I need to eat more.
Yeah.
You know, I think people just have this in their mind that, well, I'm doing more, but if I eat more, I'm going to get fat. It's like you physically need fuel to put in your body.
yeah.
Like,
Right.
and it sounds a little cheesy, but the food you're putting in is fuel, and you know, it's a pretty old adage, but you know, you're putting in, you know, jet fuel, you know, the good high quality stuff, you're going to perform better.
For sure.
You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, to have the foresight to know that you need physically more food if you are doing more is pretty good on your part to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you did that program. You were running. You did the P90X.
Yeah, I did the P90X and it was over. You know, 90 days it was
Okay.
over, and I'm like, well, what do I do now? You know, and so I kind of started it again, but I was losing interest because, I mean, you can only listen to him,
Tony Horton.
Tony Horton, so many times. You know, I think it's great. It's an amazing program. I'm glad
Yeah.
I did it, but I started it over again. But I was bored. I wasn't doing it the same way. And a friend of mine had joined, you know, and there was pictures of her being posted on there like every day, like barbell over top of her head with all this weight and stuff. And I'm like, that looks cool.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I was like, I'm looking for something different. And I reached out to her and she's like, you can come here, you know, come check it out. They'll let you come in for free and see what it's all about. And once I did that, I was like, yes, this is the next level of what I want to take my fitness to.
Basically, what I'm gathering is you're a little bit of an adventure seeker.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's you sought something out. You had obviously, and I think goal setting, which is huge. You know, turning 38 and thinking I have 2 years to make this happen. Not I'm 39 and 51 weeks.
Yeah.
I need to change my life in a week. This is going to take some time. All right, I have 2 years to make this happen, and then you know. All right, we did this. What's the next thing? I did this. What's the next thing? And the exciting thing about CrossFit and the fact that you've been with us now for, you know, 5 years, is the fact that, you know, we're always evolving and always changing. It's never obviously the same thing. And our coaching is evolving, and you're still learning new things. I think that's why a lot of people get a little either frustrated or bored with something is. If it's just the same thing over and over again, you're going to get tired of it.
Yeah, because you could have just as easily went to, you know, a big box gym, like a, you know, that should not be, you know, named, but you know, Planet Fitness, LA Fitness, all these places, just as easily, and even at a cheaper price.
Well, yeah, and I'm not going to have the motivation to
Sure.
do something like that myself. Once I got there and met the people and the community, it kept me coming back every day. Like there was that group started out with like 20 or 30 people that were already pretty close. They all embraced me. We all were instant friends. We were all instantly doing things together socially. People generally cared about you if you didn't show up for a few days and wanted to know where you were. So all of those things combined is what kept me motivated to come back.
That's huge.
Absolutely. So that was obviously the first group. We kind of came in and
Sure.
and ruffled a few feathers, so to speak. What made you kind of stay? I mean, was it because again, we went through a little bit of a transformation, just on a personal level between Mark and I, and then, you know, the business went through a little bit of a transformation, and a lot of people didn't see the training was definitely different from when we took over what it was previously.
Yeah, I'll
right?
get to that too.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can speak on that a little bit. What kind of made you stay, and you know, what you saw in that transformation.
Well, like the first year that I was there, again, I still run a lot. I like to run. It's just for my mental health and everything. I really enjoy it.
It's therapeutic.
Yes. And I was, that first year I was still running a lot because some of my goals were to maybe do some races and stuff. And we were doing some group challenges on nutrition, which I thought was awesome. That's when I was learning, first off, that I had to eat more. And I can't eat that much. But that first year of CrossFit, I probably slimmed out a lot because of the amount of strength training I was doing, and then the probably too much cardio that I was doing. And I think what was interesting was when you guys came in and changed the program, it didn't seem like at first that I was like, the workouts were a lot shorter. They were a lot different. I was still running a lot, but my focus changed that year. Like, I decided I wanted to get stronger. I noticed instantly within the first couple months that, again, my body started going under a little bit more of a transformation, and I was lifting heavier weights.
Sure.
I was probably technically doing the lifts that we do. I mean, they're tough,
Sure.
I think I learned technically how to lift weight better. And then my mind started going as that was a goal. Like, I want to learn how to squat double of what I'm doing right now. And I started to see myself get stronger really quick. Really
you're a strong guy. I mean, relatively for your size, I mean, honestly, you're compared to your body weight and so on and so forth, you move well. And I think you're a guy that generally gets it from whenever you are up against maybe a heavier weight for a workout, you're like, hey, you know what? I check my ego and I got to scale a little bit, but ultimately I can still improve. It doesn't, if it's a 300-pound deadlift and, if maybe I take some off and it's a 225, I'm still going to get some value out of this. So, as opposed to like scaling, all right, I'm just going to do 135. You're definitely a guy, because I know you've had some shoulder things and you've took the proper kind of precautions and done some therapy with using bands and so on and so forth. There's so many people I feel like that get so discouraged whenever it's like, oh, I'm not able to do the RX necessarily version or this movement or that movement. But that's one thing I noticed about you early on was like, this is a guy that gets it. He moves well. He is a strong guy that likes to be competitive with other people in the class for sure. So I feel like you get almost like the best of both worlds out of the program, because you're still not afraid to push yourself, but at the same time, when to kind of pull on the reins a little bit. And I feel like that's kind of how your story started with the running, and you were proactive with looking it up, checking out your knees, finding a different program, and then constantly like kind of looking for the next best thing.
Yeah, definitely playing the long game.
Yeah.
Right. There's no, not necessarily burning out. Right. You're okay. Well, what's the next thing? It's not that I'm just done with this. You still keep in your repertoire, so to speak, but what can I do to still improve myself without burning out on one thing or the other?
Well, CrossFit's come a long way over the last 5 years since I've been doing it. And honestly, I didn't even know what it was the day I showed up. I didn't know that there was competition. I didn't know that you were competing against other people for maybe like the first 2 weeks. I was just there because I'm looking for some fitness and something that's going to keep me motivated. And then, quickly you learn about it. But I think there's a point, depending on what your goal is, you got to be real with yourself. It's like, who am I competing against?
Sure.
Like, I'm 43 years old. I don't weigh a whole lot, and I just want to be healthy when I walk in there and when I leave there each day. My goal is to be healthy, have fun, enjoy the community that I'm with, and continue to, not necessarily, strength isn't really my goal right now. It's just to maintain a balance of being healthy and enjoying what I do when I do that.
Thank you for reiterating my point about you getting it.
Yeah.
Because that's, well spoken.
There's people that, you compare yourselves to each day when you're there to say, hey, I could probably do about what they're doing. Or you might look at that app that we have and say, hey, what did they lift? Okay, I'm going to try to maybe do about that. But there's some days I go in there and I look at it and it's like, you know what? I don't think it's even worth it for me to do that if I want to feel great by the time this
Right.
workout's over. I really got to be honest
you gotta
with myself.
weigh your risk versus reward kind
Exactly.
of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, on a personal level, I'm right now. I'm definitely there. It's dealing with a small hip issue, and I'm going to Italy in 9 or 10 days, and I don't want to be hurt for 10 days while I'm trekking around another
Lauren
country.
just wheeling you around in a wheelchair.
Yeah, exactly.
I got that snatch though.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So again, it comes down to, John, you're never one that's afraid to. I'm going to pull back a little bit today because I know that's what my body needs, and what it is lack of an ego.
Well, and maybe I do it too much sometimes, but
That's where we come into. There's certain times where there's some people that they'll start out and they physically don't know what they can lift, and that's our job. It's not just our job. It's any coach's job to know where that person needs to be and where they can push themselves safely and when they need to pull back.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. When you walk through that door, you might think about something when you're driving there. If you already know what the workout is, and you're already dialing into your mind where you're probably going to be that day. But then when you walk through the door and you see who's there, your ego can kind of step up.
Oh yeah, which is natural.
and you watch something, and that's a neat thing about CrossFit though, is because it does push you to do that a little bit.
Right.
But I think health-wise, if you have any issues or whatever, you really got to check that ego and make sure you know why you're there. And
Well, I know it's just one of those things. I use the comparison all the time of like if you're training alone in your garage or your basement versus if you're training. Even if you're not even necessarily training with other people, they're just in the room around you. Generally, you got to train harder. And especially if you've got 10 strangers doing the same workout with you, naturally, again, and for the most part, I would imagine everyone's got their blinders on. You say like, well, who am I actually competing against? The answer is yourself. Yeah. And that's the one. It's the low hanging fruit is checking the whiteboard and thinking I got to be at the top or whatever that is, and that can be some people's demise towards an injury because you're chasing this number, the open every time it comes up. I know some of the elite coaches now don't even let their athletes check the leaderboard because it gives them anxiety and stress and all things that aren't good towards fitness. So if you're checking the workout and it's giving you anxiety and stress, guess what you shouldn't be doing? Checking the workout.
Yeah.
Just show up, trust your coaches. That's one of the things that we are a resource. We've been doing this now for over 10 years, or plus or whatever in the fitness industry and training. And it's like, look, if I don't know how to modify a movement, like I am just incompetent and you should probably find a different gym. So but I get that still. Like I get like wanting to do it RX and stuff, but at the same time, it's always pulling it back. So whether it's realizing you have an injury or, hey, you know what, this is actually really, really hard. And CrossFit is literally on the cutting edge of elite fitness, so it's also recognizing that we're not doing this basic program. This is hard stuff. Some days
And
more difficult than
skill
others.
learning too.
Yeah.
I talk about that all the time with people that it's teaching the old dog new tricks. When you said you started at 38, I can probably guarantee you that you could never foresee the stuff you'd be doing now.
I never picked up a barbell before the age of 38.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's there's a whole other thing to be said there too, because there were no bad habits to unlearn. That's something we encountered from time to time. Ex football players that were taught by a coach how to power clean, and the person who taught them was an old football player. It taught and it's like these ingrained bad techniques. And with someone like you, it was almost a blank slate because you're just an open book on how do I do this? Please, someone show me the correct way to
Right.
do this.
Yeah, and you're coachable. you
Yeah.
know?
Well, that's what I like about the CrossFit is the coaches are always paying attention to what you're doing, and if it's too much, you should be
That's too much.
settle down a
Right.
little bit.
Or your
know,
body's
and-
going to tell you for it, and it's not going to be,
exactly.
hey, settle down. It's going to be, well, now you got to rest for a month.
Yep.
So-
If someone is kind of starting out now, do you have any advice for what you can tell them that might either, because again, there's still a stigma that we battle almost every day, or there's at minimum misconceptions that people have about what we do. If someone is just I'm interested, but I'm scared or I'm apprehensive?
I mean, I think the greatest thing about CrossFit is there's so many modifications to everything we do. It's like you guys said, it's a demanding sport. It's all about technique. You know, if we're talking about doing CrossFit, that it's a timed workout, like how quick can you actually do your fitness? My biggest thing with anybody that's new is how quick can you do your fitness correctly?
John, you want to be a coach?
I mean, it's, how, like, there's people that are out there trying to do it as quick as they can, but you need to focus on the techniques first in the beginning, and then the speed will follow.
Sure.
Because if you've got the speed without the technique, it's just like anything you do. Then, you know, there's going to be an injury, or there's going to be something that suffers along the way there.
I think just think about anyone who is the top of their game in their sport. It doesn't matter what sport it is. When you watch someone do something that they have perfected, it looks effortless and it looks graceful. You know, and there's something to be said about adding that word grace and just smoothing things out and making sure everything is perfect before you jump into the more complex things. Again, as kids, you know, it's weird because kids can be impatient on certain things, but they can also learn how to do things correctly before moving on to that next step, or at least you can tell them to. You know, for some reason as adults, I feel like we see, all right, I'm starting, I should already be able to do this, let's go to the next thing. And they don't want to take the time to learn how to do the basics correctly. You know,
Just look at a gymnast.
Look at a gymnast. I mean, we go through the arch and hollow every time we do toes to bar, every time we do pull-ups, and sometimes I want to apologize because I know it seems mundane to people, but at the same time I don't, because it's absolutely that important. If you speak to anyone who's done gymnastics or people who have kids that do gymnastics, they spend the first 2 or 3 years learning hollow and arch and holding that position. You know, if you ever watch the higher end CrossFit athletes who were gymnasts, they're unreal. It looks like everything they do is so effortless because there is this poise and grace in everything that they do. And then it's the same thing with weightlifting, you know.
It's all technical stuff, and you can't pass it up. I mean, something as easy as a push-up. I mean, well, not easy, but I mean, push-ups aren't easy for everybody. But there's definitely technique to it. You know, it's not just throwing your body on the ground and lifting yourself up with your arms. There's a right way to have your hands.
There's a bracing sequence and setup.
All of that type of stuff. So it's just even starting with the basic stuff for anybody that's in the intro is if you do those things right in the beginning, it's because you're learning how to build your muscles so that you can keep moving on beyond those modifications. And you have to pass, you know, the first modification before you can get to the second one or the third one to be, you know, what we would consider RX, I guess.
Sure. And, I think even in the professional world, even here, you can give someone all the equipment in the world, but if they haven't taken the time to learn how to use it correctly, everything they do is still going to be crap.
Correct.
Right.
I'm going to take a quick break. We'll come back and we will talk a little bit more about John's death metal days.
Awesome.
We'll be right back. CrossFit is demanding both physically and mentally. Setting goals are the foundation to push your athletic ability, and the hour we have together a day may not always be in line with those personal milestones you've set for yourself. Triumph Performance is based around just that, your goals. Together in a one-on-one setting with your coach, we will set manageable and timely goals. Your program, unique to your needs, will accelerate the path to your target. Most have an idea of where they may want to go, but together with your Triumph Performance coach, we will assess your fitness level, develop a custom fitness plan, and keep you on track to successfully complete your goal. For more information, please contact a coach or email info@triumphstrength.net. And we're back. We are here with John Carrico on the Everyday Athlete podcast, sitting in his studio. My a dream apartment when I was like, I could still live here. It'd be awesome. John, I'm moving in. Sorry. We left off talking a lot about CrossFit and just how it has improved you of your life. what I kind of want to know is what is the underlying reason why you still push yourself?
Well, I have 2 kids that are athletes, and that's another reason. I just want to set an example for them. If I'm going to be on the sidelines expecting for them to perform at like a high level, I mean, my daughter plays a lot of sports, and I don't mean
She's a beast.
she plays a lot of sports, and so we're rarely free on a weekend or anything like that. And if I'm going to try to push her, I feel that I should be setting an example of how I push myself. I mean, she knows how demanding CrossFit is. They mix some of that into their programming and stuff with soccer and with basketball at other gyms, and or their trainers and stuff bring all that stuff in, and she knows it's hard. It's really hard. And if she sees that I'm doing it, then I hope that sets a little bit of an example for her to continue trying harder.
Oh, I think that is absolutely huge. Yeah. Too often, I think you see just growing up playing a lot of soccer as well, just a ton, all the time, all year round, and the sideline coaches, the parents who think they might as well be the one running the team, and it's like sometimes when you see some of those people and you're like, well, A, you're not my coach, but B, why would I ever take advice from you when you can barely sit up out of your chair? And I think that's, people don't realize, as a parent, I don't have kids, not that I know of, but the influence that you can have on anyone younger than you is huge. And being able to move correctly and be fit and have an active lifestyle will just bleed over in a positive way to anyone that's around you.
Yeah, and right now it's a great time. My son, he likes to run. He runs cross country. He does a really good job at it. That's like his, sport that he performs best at. I get to run with him. I mean, it's awesome. We go on runs all the time together, and it's like I get to show him, how to push yourself when it starts to get hard, like when not to give up, how to set goals, how to say that this is what we're doing, and when he gets tired and says he can't do it, point out and say, hey, we're just going to keep going until we get to this point, and show him what it takes for when he's in a race that, this is what you do to get to that finish line. And that's fun, because I'd never, ever once in my life considered myself an athlete. I was doing CrossFit as something to be healthy with, and I never thought of it for me so much as a sport or that I was an athlete. But then when I started working with him and running, I started realizing, like, wow, maybe I am an athlete. Maybe I do have something to show and something to teach him. So,
yeah, absolutely. That's probably one of the best things about what we get to do is show people that, Mark and I were talking about our why, and I think it changes from time to time, but, especially over the last couple of years, it's really been into having nothing to do with us. I think honestly, as business owners, it was probably a lot more about us to start, and that's why we weren't really successful when we first started. Not that we're a huge success now, but I think just having a mind shift and mindset change to
the clients are the heroes.
The clients are the heroes. That's why we do this. That's why we're sitting here with you right now. But writing it down into an actual formable sentence, and Mark brought up basically to instill the confidence that wasn't there in the people before, and for a lot of people, we get a lot of people who are deathly afraid of what we do for whatever reason, and showing them that you can do all of these things.
All the things we've been talking about can easily be looked at as physical things, but especially whenever, you just brought it to light with your son, like when it gets to that point in that run, or for most people just in life, in your job, in your marriage, in your relationship with a friend, where you are just, befuddled, or you're like, what do I do? And it's just that mental capacity in a run scenario to be able to push through it, in a relationship capacity to be able to maybe have that tough conversation or whatever it needs to be, but just to be a positive influence, generally speaking, and those around you would be obviously one of our missions that we hope we instill in people, that we are hopefully one of the best parts of their day, We definitely want it to be an uplifting experience through just punishment sometimes, you know, for lack of a better term. You know, when you're doing somebody's workout, you're absolutely punishing yourself. But through that, it's almost like the rise of the phoenix or something, man. Like once you leave there, you're like, all right, like I'm ready to rock. And to be able to pass that on to the next generation, man, I mean, that's like on a whole different level. So I applaud you for doing that with your son and daughter.
And I think, John, sometime you're there at your lonesome 7:30 a.m. class that
you're a maverick.
Yeah, on your own. But I think there's a reason you stop by there on your way to work. I think it's a good way to start your day.
Oh, like I really miss it on days that I can't. It clears my mind from the beginning. I use it for mental clarity as much as I use it for fitness and strength. I mean, it really helps me get on with my day.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I'm not there in the morning, it's just not going to happen either. So
Yeah, that's true too. I mean, I've been trying this thing out this week with Rob. We've been working out at 4:30 in the morning, and this was our third day in a row doing it. And it's tough to get out of bed, you know, initially, but once you're there and you work out high intensity, and you leave there, and it's like, oh wow, it's only 6 a.m. or whatever, and I've got my whole day in front of me, and I feel energized, and I feel really good. And granted, again, adapting to it, like that 2-3 in the afternoon, you're like, all right, got to kind of push through this like groggy lunch kind of sensation, but it's been awesome, and it's really kind of propelled my day into even a little more productivity, and kind of reframed my mind to where, at first I might not have wanted to come in because maybe I'm not going to be able to lift as much as I would if I had trained at 2 in the afternoon or whatever. It's like once I can get over that little bit and just realize like, hey, look, it's not about that. It's about coming in here and spending time with this guy and working out and trying to propel myself to a better day, but also front loading it with the workout so that I'm not, banking on having an hour after work or whatever the case may be to come back in. And so many people miss that time because, without a doubt, something's going to come up in your day multiple times a week that are going to make you miss a workout. So that's why I really try to, persuade people to come in the morning, even more so.
That's why there was, 5:30 or 6:30 a.m. classes.
Yeah, there was
some of those packed classes we have in the day.
Yeah.
17, 20 people at 5:30 in the morning. When you tell people that aren't familiar with what exactly is happening, they're like, why? But then when you see it, it makes a little bit more sense. We talked, obviously, so we have a little bit of motivation with just the family. Are there other motivators in your life that keep you in the realm of fitness, or just in general, maybe professionally?
I don't know about fitness, other motivators. I would say it's the community, the community, the people I've been working out with for 5 years. There's still a handful of those people from day one that are there. I thoroughly enjoy seeing them. I thoroughly enjoy hanging out with them. I like to go golfing with them. Yep. All kinds of things like that have rooted out of this.
Out of working out. It's weird when you hear it again, when you're outside of that world and you hear it, you're like, you mean like, you go golfing with these guys, or, we've seen people just become really good friends over the years. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't make sense when you're thinking of a traditional gym sense. Like you would not go to, again, a Planet Fitness or your kind of bigger box gyms and make friends there. It's a very
definitely not
one track.
50.
Yeah, definitely not 50 friends.
Maybe 1 or 2. But
of all ages and of all different, backgrounds and stuff.
John, we would have never met.
No, we wouldn't have.
It was destiny.
Not.
I mean, full circle, both Mark and I got our engagement rings 1 floor below from here.
Exactly.
Due to John's recommendation.
It's a great networking place. It really is.
It really is.
Absolutely. So. It's pretty crazy to see. Well, I guess, maybe not motivators, but what about any mentors or anyone along the way, maybe professionally or in your life, that's kind of pushed you one direction or the other? I mean, you brought up one that obviously kind of started you down this path in the business, but has anybody else been along the way?
Oh, you mean like outside of like fitness and CrossFit and stuff? I don't know. That was like the biggest one. Like, he got me started for the first year, And then, I started working with another photographer that had different abilities than he did. This other guy that I started working with was a technical photographer. Like everything he did was just so technical oriented. I realized I need to learn that stuff. The first guy was great with people, and he really showed me the business side of stuff, how to interact with people when you're photographing them. And then I moved on to learn the technical abilities. And it's kind of, it was great that I got to learn both of those things from my two mentors in the beginning, because those are the things you have to keep going on. Once I had technical abilities and I learned how to work with people behind the camera, it all really started coming together. That's when I really started to believe in myself, that I had the confidence to go and do this as a profession. Otherwise, it was like, I've always been really good with people. I can get them to respond to me pretty well, and but you have to know the technical side of stuff that you don't want to think about in my industry when you're doing it. And it's kind of like the same way with weightlifting or CrossFit or something. Once you get past that technical ability, you don't have to so much think about it. It just magically fires over and over and over again. But
we want a second nature response, where you don't have to think about it. And that's why we spend so much time on something like the hollow and arch, because once you nail that down, that it becomes second nature. You don't have to think about every time you get up on a bar what you're going to do. To probably just brag on you a little bit. I mean, I think what you just said there is having the wherewithal to realize that I need someone to show me how to do this, because again, if you're a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, find someone that knows more than you.
Always.
Because that is the only way you're going to get yourself ahead. Because, if you have someone who's very good with people, like you said, and someone who's very technical, they're going to be great in their own realm, but they're still lacking something. So when you can have those two people and bring the best of both worlds together and make it something your own, that's when you find real success.
Yeah, and our studio is a little bit different than a lot of studios. Usually it's like one guy that's a photographer, and it's like John Carrico Photography or something like that. I chose to partner with a couple people, and we got rid of our names. We kind of got rid of the ego. And the idea was that the three of us were going to work together and create something bigger than one guy with a camera and one name. And that's what we pride ourselves on here. We have a team. I couldn't pull off any of the work that I do without my team. People look at our work every day and they want to hire us, and they're like, oh, well, we don't need the stylist. We don't need a food stylist and an assistant. We don't need the hair and makeup artist. And I'm like, if you're looking at my work and what you see there and you like it, then we need all those things. Because that's what you're responding to, and that's what it takes. It takes a team of people to do this. And relating back to CrossFit, it takes that team to be there every day to get me to want to come.
Right.
It takes the continued efforts that you guys keep putting in there and improving the gym every day for me to want to come. If it was just one trainer that I had to show up to every day, I would get bored really quick.
Absolutely.
What's something you're currently passionate about? Is there a project you're working on, or just family stuff, or?
I'm currently passionate about. I don't know. That's a tough question. I'm involved in a lot of things at once right now, and music has always been a passion of mine.
You play the drums?
I do.
Yeah.
So when I thought,
did your band open up for Nirvana or something at one point?
Tool once.
Tool.
Oh man.
Let's go back
I've played in the same club as Nirvana a week afterwards.
Let's get into some of those stories.
So yeah. Back in the day, we were on the same tour circuit as Nirvana and all the Sub Pop bands. So
music's kind of one of those things. If you do play an instrument, it's kind of tough to kind of shake, I guess, for lack of a better term. That passion. Like you said, I know you said you're obviously passionate about photography. That's kind of why you chose to pursue that. But yeah, I wasn't sure if there's do you guys still kind of make music, or is it?
Yeah. I've been in a band for, I don't know. I guess I've been making music with the same guys for about the last 12 years or so, and. It's just always fun. Again, it's kind of like running for me. If I don't do it, I start to mentally break down a little bit.
Yeah. you need releases. I just personally went and saw Kyle's band over at Motor last Saturday, and I think they've been kind of off for like 3 years, and it's pretty cool to see the different side of someone. And again, someone like Kyle that Mark and I have known for quite some time. You've probably met him.
Yeah. I know Kyle.
Okay, so
Yep.
He's one of those guys. He's always been just kind of goofball, funny, awesome friend, and to see him really in his element in a sense that I've never really seen before is awesome to see. It's so cool to see someone just really pour their passion out in front of a group of people
when they're in their flow state, right?
Yeah, when
Or
we're just reading about
it. And I'm sure, John, you experience that whenever you're on a good shoot, or whatever it is, and you're interacting and you're making it happen and you're bringing art to life. And same thing probably whenever you're playing the drums. But I think the through line with that stuff is passion.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to find a good flow if I'm like, I don't know, doing something you really don't want to do, taking out the trash, you name it. And I try to find that within CrossFit. I don't know if it's a flow state as much of it is a torture state. Yeah. Sometimes when you're in those workouts, but whenever you're in that pain cave or whatever, usually, coming out of that again is whenever you sometimes have your better thoughts or so on and so forth. Maybe not just right after, but to springboard you into that day or whatever it is, whatever time of day you're working out. But do you guys have any shows or anything coming up?
No shows right now. We actually have rehearsal tonight. We've just been working on writing a bunch of new music.
What style of music?
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you tamed away from some of the hardcore metal.
Did you just have long hair, ponytail, maybe? No?
Longer hair.
Longer?
Pretty shaggy.
Yeah.
You wouldn't
Nice.
recognize me from then, but no, I always look pretty much the same. But no,
I had hair once too.
Yeah.
No,
I've just been born like
it's
this.
impossible.
No, I started out playing like punk rock and speed metal stuff when
Oh,
I was
cool.
a teenager, and
What's your favorite song to cover?
favorite song to cover. I've never really covered songs.
Oh, yeah.
I just really haven't. Like I've always played original music.
Just say Stairway to Heaven.
When I played punk rock and metal, we covered some songs, but like bands like the Bad Brains and Rollins Band, and we did Bad Brains and Rollins bands really well.
That guy's inspirational.
So, yes.
Yeah.
He's badass.
Absolutely. One thing I always like to touch on is just, and you've actually touched on it a couple times without saying it, but just more so I feel like you already had it and then you entered into CrossFit. But what we see a lot of times are people that come in and then that mental ability to problem solve easier after going into CrossFit for a couple of years. And again, I don't know why. It's almost like a phenomenon I want to study more, but seeing people able to handle heavier loads mentally because they're handling physically heavier loads. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know if again, I feel like you had that probably before just by talking to you for the short time, but I don't know if you saw it increase or if you see your correlation there.
Being able to mentally handle stuff better because of the physical things that I do there. Oh, I think so, without a doubt. Like with anything that you can push yourself towards, I think, cognitively that's gonna come back to you in real life. Like even if you're, no matter what it is, whatever we take on ourselves, it's definitely, I think that's a given that should happen. Whether you realize it or not, it's happening.
Yeah.
Can you recall like a crucible moment, like where you climbed the mountain, John, and you're like, now I get it?
Yeah. I'm gonna right before throwing up after Karen.
Yes, there it is.
It finally clicked.
CrossFit's one of those things that I don't think a lot of people understand all the time. It's extremely hard, and it never gets easier. You just get better at it, and you figure out a way to get mental toughness a little bit further next time, and a little bit further next time, and then the weights get a little bit heavier. So it never really gets easier. It's all about you and how much you want to push yourself to go to there. If you want to flatline and like just do a light weight and go through the movements every day, you can, but chances are you're still going to get stronger and you're going to do them faster. And
it's one of my favorite things about the CrossFit Games is you see these fittest men and women in the world, and they're just collapsing after the workouts. I mean, they are just all in all the time. And you're like, oh wow, they make that look so easy. And it's like, you know, they're panning the camera and then like they cross the finish line and it just looks like they got hit by a train.
Yeah. Well, I think too, even when was the pegboard the first year? Was that 20?
Was that 3 years ago, I think?
Yeah, the first year of the pegboard, and you see these guys that
2015.
2015. A lot of the females, especially the females, guys struggled through it. It was really tough, but a lot of the females, you're in live TV. It does not make for very exciting television when the fittest people in the world are staring at a piece of plywood, going, "I can't do that," and then cut to next year, and everybody can do it.
Mm-hmm.
It just goes to show, you throw a challenge in front of people, and wow, we're going to answer, and it just goes back to being able to internalize a problem, whether it's physical or mental, and just being able to work yourself through it. Because again, I think a big change for a lot of people is when they finally stop saying, "It don't look that bad," and respecting the workout and know that it's probably going to be that bad, but knowing that you're going to make it through the other side. Realizing that you can quit, but you're not going to let yourself go.
Yeah, I mean, 75% of the time when I'm working out, I'm trying to figure out a way to quit or how to make this easier. But before you know it, you just keep pushing on through and you're done and you're proud of yourself by the time you're done. But there's, you're pushing yourself a lot at that point. If you're like, this is miserable, how am I even possibly going to do another 50 wall balls or something like that? But I don't know. We learn.
Yeah.
And then over time, it makes things like maybe meal prepping not look so hard.
Yes.
I just did all this stuff.
Well, and two, that's it's a great way to continue on with progress. Anyone that comes in, they're coming in for exercise, and during the fundamentals, one of the things we talk about is nutrition. And I always tell people, is like, you'll eventually probably get to whatever goal you have. I was like, but you'll accelerate it by paying attention to what you're putting in your body, and the people who get that right away usually see they're hitting the gas pedal quicker, and it's such a key missing component for so many people. Just something as simple as making your meals for the week on Sunday, just sacrificing tailgating.
It's a hard thing to keep up with. I mean, it depends. Again, it all comes down to what your goals are. Like, if your goal is to come into the gym every day and maybe be at the top of that leaderboard or be like wherever you think you need to be, I mean, you probably have to keep up with that stuff. But real life is out there too.
Real life gets in the way.
And, you got to find that balance between, am I like coming here to be an athlete? Am I coming here to be just like better fit?
Right.
And what time am I competing? And what time am I being better fit? It's a big balance because CrossFit is always asking us to try as hard as we can all the time. And it's a tough thing to keep up with for 5 years or something like that. I go in and out of like the nutrition part and the intensity of the workouts because sometimes work gets really busy.
Yep.
And you got to figure out where your focus is at that point.
That's a good learning tool as well, to know that you're not going to, because again, we've all gotten to that point where, I got to make it to the gym today or everything's going to be lost. And knowing that you're going to be, if you take a month off, it'll suck when you come back, but like, it's going to be okay.
Oh, I've done it several times.
Yeah.
I mean, several times. And it's,
we miss you every time, John.
But I mean, there's times where like you're wondering, it might be a week that you're like, I can only get in there for one day. I think you got to let yourself know that that's a day that I'm coming into the gym to be fit, not to necessarily compete. I'm not there to necessarily.
I'm not going to make up for the other 6 days.
Like, so don't get down on yourself because I see a lot of people doing that. And it's just like, just accept it as a workout, not a competition that day.
But I think too, it's just not letting the rails fall off as busy as life can get and work can get. It's like, all right, well, I'm not going to the gym this week, so I'm going to have pancakes for breakfast, pizza for lunch, and pasta for dinner.
Yeah.
It's just making those decisions.
That's not recommended?
Yeah, well, I got a blueprint of a diet I'm working on. It's actually top secret. It's called All the Carbs.
Because I was told I could run further if I do that.
Patent pending.
Patent pending. I love it.
Sorry.
This is something we came up with, and if you've listened to any of these, it's always one of the last questions we kind of exit with, and we got some pretty awesome answers, and I'm always curious to see what people have to say.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Uh-oh.
John, I hope you have studied, and
When I say pencils down, I mean pencils down.
I'm gonna delete this whole podcast if it's bad. No. So John, what is your definition of fitness? And obviously this is a very broad term, so this doesn't go in any direction you want. It's really just what does it mean to you?
Silence. Yeah. I'm trying to think of the best way to answer it properly, because it probably means a lot different to me than it means a lot to other people.
No,
But,
let's hear what does it mean to you?
There's no wrong answer.
Like, at the end of the day, all of us want to look good. We all want to look good. I mean, so at the basic level, why do we keep doing it? Like, I want to look good. I want to be healthy. I want to look healthy. I want to set examples for people that I work with. I want to set examples for my kids, as we talked about before, about looking good and moving good. As I get older and older, I realize that, like, some of the things that I was doing 5 years ago, I'm not doing them. Like, my goals have changed now. Like, for a while I was wanting to get super strong, and I did. There was a couple years ago that I was lifting. I was amazed at how much I could back squat, like nearly twice my body weight. And I'm like, how am I physically doing that? That was a goal for a while. I got there. And then as life kept getting busier and busier, I started to realize, you know what? I just want to maintain how well I look and how well I feel mentally, physically, all of that. So for me, like, fitness is just like not about how much I look, how good I look, but how well I feel looking that way. You know, I don't know. It's pretty simple for me right now. It's just that CrossFit's demanding. You can get injured if you're not doing it right. It's to keep my shoulder healthy so I can keep doing a lot of these moves. If that means cutting down the weight to stay healthy, I cut back the weight so I can still come in there every day and remain healthy. If I push myself too far, I feel it. And I'm like, okay, that's the opposite reason why I'm showing up here every day. So I set the ego back a notch so you can continue with this lifelong goal of, you know, looking good and feeling good the way you look, you know. So
I love it.
That's it.
It's good
That's
stuff.
fantastic. And that is the actual definition of checking your ego at the door.
Yeah.
You know, for a lot of people say it, and it is one of the hardest things to do. You know, I'd like to think that my ego has shrunken quite a bit, but it's still, it gets in the way more often than I'd like to admit.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I know how much time it takes to I know how much time it took me to get to, I weigh roughly 155 pounds. My 1 rep max on a back squat at one point was 275. For me, that was a lot of weight to be able to do. And I'm kind of far away from that, but I remember now looking back on how long it took me to get to that point. Well, I slacked off because of work and family life and all kinds of things that get in the way, and it goes away really quick. And when you go back in there and you try to get somewhere close to that, you're a little frustrated with yourself of like, why am I not there? Why am I not there right now? And then you're thinking in a couple weeks, like, oh, it's just today. Like, I should be there. And then I quickly realized, wait, it took me months and eating extremely healthy and coming in religiously every day, like,
To get to that
to
point.
get to that point. I forgot how much I was lifting on my own in the morning before class to get to that point. That it's not going to magically just show up again.
Well, I think Mark, just speaking on back squats in particular, you know, Mark doesn't even like talk about it, but Mark had a 500-pound back squat at one
I was
point.
there that day.
It was very
awesome.
impressive. And guess what? Mark has zero desire ever to do that again.
Yeah.
Correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So, you know, and a lot of people would be, oh, I can't believe you back squat that. That's amazing. And it's like, I checked it off the list and I hurt for a while after that, you know?
Yeah, you know, on a 200-pound frame, it wasn't economical. You know, I'm not using gear and straps and crazy stuff. And it's just one of those things, like you said, you just look at your priorities in life and you're like, oh, well, you know, what's next in that realm? And it's like, nothing. You know, I want to pursue something else now. And I think that's the important thing. I've heard you use the word goal several times. And I think when we are pursuing goals, the synonymous word is almost discipline. You know, so it's like, hey, I was pursuing that goal. So I was at you, whenever you spouted out all these things, those are disciplines. You know, I was lifting before class. I was eating better. I was, you know, and that's the best thing. You know, there's various opinions out there about goals are good, goals are bad, so on and so forth. Whatever term you want to put on an objective, at the end of the day, if it creates better disciplines, then it's healthy, you know, because that's life. You know, going to bed at a certain time, getting up in the morning, handling your business, especially from an entrepreneurial standpoint. It's very, you know, on my productive days, I'm very disciplined. On my unproductive days, I am undisciplined. You know, it's that simple. I mean, it's not that simple, but it's that black and white to where, you know, if I'm just scrolling through Facebook, guess what? It's one thing because you know, you're trying to understand culture, and Facebook is kind of on that cutting edge right now as far as their platform and stuff like that. But like a lot of things, there's a diminishing return. You know, a piece of pizza, maybe not too bad. The whole pizza, you might
Not
have
good.
a diminishing return. But no, man, I really appreciate you. You know, we appreciate you sharing your story, man.
Thanks.
It's been fun.
Thanks for being on, John. And thank you all for listening to Everyday Athlete. Join us next week as we dive deep into the lives of the people who make us great. Thanks.
Thank you, John.